Clothes are meant to make us look good, keep us warm, or help us stand out. But who knew they could turn deadly? Yep, you heard that right. Over the years, some truly bizarre and unexpected tragedies have occurred where people lost their lives, not to wild animals or freak accidents, but to their own outfits. From deadly accessories to wardrobe mishaps straight out of a horror movie, these stories are as strange as they are unsettling. Buckle up as we dive into 5 of the most jaw-dropping cases where clothing turned into a killer. It was a bright August day in 2012, the kind where the sunshine feels endless and the world seems full of promise. In the quiet town of Hoarding, Quebec, Maria Pantazopoulos, a vibrant 30-year-old real estate agent, was brimming with excitement. She was set to take part in a Trash the Dress photo shoot, a trend that had become a symbol of daring fun, where brides wear their wedding dresses in unconventional settings for unique and unforgettable photos. For Maria, this was more than just a shoot. It was a celebration of her joyful new chapter, after marrying the love of her life just months earlier. Maria had every reason to smile that day. She had recently returned from a dreamy Caribbean honeymoon and was thriving in her new job in Laval. Her optimism and zest for life were infectious, her laughter a constant companion to those who knew her. She told friends, "I want to make my wedding dress unforgettable, not something that just gathers dust." But no one could have imagined the haunting twist fate had planned. The chosen location was the picturesque Waro River, nestled about 75 kilometers from Montreal. As Maria stepped into her pristine wedding dress, her photographer, Louis Pagakis, prepared to capture the magic. The scene was idyllic. The calm river glistening under the summer sun, the air filled with anticipation. Maria waded into the shallow water, the hem of her dress grazing the surface as she playfully splashed. She was radiant, completely in the moment. But as the shoot progressed, Maria ventured further into the river. Her dress, designed for beauty rather than practicality, began to absorb water like a sponge. It grew heavier with every step, transforming into a leaden weight. Yet Maria, determined to capture the perfect shot, kept going, her excitement masking the brewing danger. The mood shifted in an instant. The dress, now fully waterlogged, clung to her with a suffocating force. What had been a symbol of joy and freedom became an anchor, pulling her down into the river's depths. Panic set in as Maria realized she couldn't fight the weight dragging her under. Louis rushed to her side, shouting for help, his hands desperately trying to lift her, but the gown refused to let go. Maria's voice, once so full of life, broke through the chaos with chilling finality. "I can't anymore. It's too heavy." Then, silence. For hours, rescuers searched frantically, but the current and the unrelenting weight of the dress had claimed her. By 4:30 p.m., her lifeless body was recovered, leaving behind a community shattered by grief. Family and friends, who knew Maria as a beacon of kindness and strength, were left to grapple with the unthinkable. A vibrant life stolen in a moment meant for celebration. Maria's tragic story is a stark reminder of how joy can so suddenly turn to sorrow. Her memory serves as a warning of the unforeseen dangers that can lurk in even the most beautiful moments. For those who loved her, the heartbreak remains, a painful echo of a day that should have been filled with nothing but light. It was New Year's Day, 2015, in the quiet town of St. Joseph, Michigan, a day brimming with the promise of fresh beginnings. Christina Bond, a 55-year-old mother of 2 and a newly elected Republican precinct delegate, was at home. A Navy veteran, a fitness champion, and a pillar of her community, Christina had built a life defined by strength, resilience, and service. But in a cruel twist of fate, her determination to protect herself would lead to an unthinkable tragedy. That morning, Christina was adjusting a new accessory, a bra holster designed to provide a discreet way for women to carry firearms. It seemed like the perfect solution, practical, inconspicuous, and empowering. But as Christina fiddled with the holster, trying to get it to fit just right, something went terribly wrong. With her gaze fixed downward, Christina shifted the firearm within the holster. The details are chillingly simple: a moment of frustration, a small adjustment, and then a deafening crack that shattered the stillness of the day. The gun discharged, and the bullet struck her directly in the eye. Neighbors later described hearing a commotion, but couldn't have imagined the horror unfolding inside Christina's home. First responders rushed to the scene, finding Christina gravely injured. She was airlifted to Bronson Methodist Hospital in Kalamazoo, clinging to life. For hours, doctors fought desperately to save her, but by the following day, Christina was gone. Her death sent shockwaves through the community. How could a woman so strong, so capable, lose her life in such a devastating and unexpected way? Christina was more than just a mother and community leader. She was a beacon of faith and resilience. At her church, where she ministered for 15 years, and at the local jail, where she counseled inmates, she was known for her unwavering kindness and strength. Her son, Nicholas, in a heart-wrenching tribute, described her as God's most powerful soldier on earth. She was a woman who had conquered challenges that would have broken others. 2 years in the Navy, a championship in bodybuilding, and countless acts of service to her community. And yet, in the simplest of moments, while adjusting a holster designed to keep her safe, her life was tragically cut short. Christina's story raises haunting questions about firearm safety and the risks posed by certain accessories like bra holsters. Experts later speculated that the gun discharged because it either slipped from its clamshell or her finger inadvertently triggered it during adjustment. Whatever the cause, the tragedy is a sobering reminder of the potential dangers lurking in everyday decisions. Her death left behind a void that words can hardly capture. A mother lost to her children, a friend gone too soon, and a community forever changed. As Nicholas wrote in his heartfelt tribute, "It's in her strength that I've found my own." But now, that strength feels so far away. Christina's legacy as a woman of faith, resilience, and determination endures, but her death stands as a powerful and painful cautionary tale, a reminder that even in moments of control, life can take an unexpected and devastating turn. It was a calm Sunday morning in 2009 in Alicante, Spain. The streets of Avenida Alcoy were quiet, the kind of serene stillness that belied the horrors about to unfold. Inside a cramped, modest apartment lived a family of 4, a Moroccan couple in their late 40s and their 2 daughters, aged 18 and 12. Their life appeared ordinary on the surface, with the parents making a living by collecting and selling second-hand clothes. But behind closed doors, their reality was anything but ordinary. For years, the parents had struggled with a compulsive hoarding disorder known as Diogenes syndrome. Their apartment, less than 60 square meters, had become a labyrinth of towering boxes and suffocating piles of clothes. The hoarded items were a mix of their livelihood and their compulsion, gradually overtaking every corner of their home. Yet, life carried on. The older daughter spent late nights browsing the internet, often sleeping well into the mornings, while her younger sister and parents endured the claustrophobic environment. That Sunday morning, sometime between 8 and 9 a.m., catastrophe struck. Without warning, the weight of the hoarded clothes proved too much for the floor to bear. A deafening crash echoed through the apartment as the first floor gave way, sending an avalanche of clothes, boxes, and debris crashing down. Beneath the suffocating mass lay the parents and their 12-year-old daughter, buried alive. And yet, disturbingly, the tragedy unfolded in silence. The older daughter, sleeping in a nearby room, heard nothing. Neighbors, too, reported no sounds of the disaster. It wasn't until hours later, around 1 p.m., that the older daughter woke up. Groggy and disoriented, she sensed something was wrong. The eerie stillness in the apartment gnawed at her, and as she ventured into her parents' room, a chilling sight stopped her cold. The floor had caved in, leaving behind a chaotic sea of clothes and debris. Panicking, she began to dig through the wreckage, calling out for her family. Her heart sank when her fingers brushed against something cold, her younger sister's lifeless arm, jutting out from the pile. Frantic, she dialed emergency services, her voice trembling with terror. Rescue teams arrived quickly, but the sheer scale of the disaster was overwhelming. Firefighters and police struggled to navigate the mountains of clothing. The air grew heavy with the grim reality of their task. Hours passed, every second stretching into an agonizing eternity as they worked tirelessly to uncover the victims. The first body they found was the 12-year-old girl. Hope dwindled as paramedics confirmed what they feared. She hadn't survived. Still, the rescue efforts continued, driven by the desperate hope of saving the parents. But by the end of the day, the remaining bodies were found, lifeless beneath the crushing weight of their own hoard. As investigators surveyed the wreckage, the chilling truth emerged. Years of unchecked hoarding had transformed the apartment into a death trap. The sheer weight of the items had caused the floor to collapse, and the victims had likely suffocated or been crushed under the immense pressure. The surviving daughter was left utterly alone, her family taken in the most horrifying way imaginable. The tragedy was a harrowing reminder of the dangers of hoarding, particularly in confined spaces. Diogenes syndrome, often dismissed as eccentricity, had led to unimaginable devastation. This incident didn't just claim lives, it shattered the illusion of normalcy. It highlighted how compulsive behaviors, left unchecked, can spiral into catastrophe. As the surviving daughter grappled with her loss, the world was left to reckon with the haunting reality of what had happened on that quiet Sunday morning. A home filled with promise had become a tomb of despair. It was a bitterly cold evening in 2015 in the quiet township of Stony Creek, Pennsylvania, the kind of night when every creak and groan of the old houses seemed amplified. Inside one such home, 68-year-old James Schaffer sat alone, as he had for the past 25 years. Blind since birth, James was known for his resilience and independence, qualities that endeared him to his neighbors. But tonight, something ominous lurked within the walls of his modest home, a danger James couldn't see coming. That night, James felt a sharp ache in his leg, a familiar discomfort he often eased with warmth. Unaware of the peril that lay ahead, he reached for a dry towel and placed it in the microwave to warm. It was a simple act, one he'd done before without incident, but this time was different. Just 15 seconds after the microwave hummed to life, the towel erupted into flames. Oblivious to the fire's growing fury, James opened the microwave. The moment the scorching air met his face, he realized too late the peril he was in. The burning towel fell against him, setting his flannel shirt ablaze. The flames licked hungrily at the fabric, spreading faster than he could react. Blinded by both the inferno and his disability, James fought through the chaos, his instincts guiding him down the hall toward the bathroom. Flames leaped from his shirt to the carpet as he moved, leaving a smoldering trail in his wake. The air was thick with acrid smoke, and every breath seared his lungs. Reaching the bathroom, James managed to activate the shower, drenching himself to extinguish the fire. When the Oakland Fire Department arrived, they found a scene that shook even the most seasoned responders. James stood in the bathroom, his body burned over 80%, his clothes reduced to charred remnants. And yet, he was calm, unnervingly so. Deputy Chief David Ream would later recall the haunting image of James, his voice steady despite his agony. "I'm sorry," James said repeatedly, his words thick with remorse. "I should have known better." His apology, delivered between shallow, labored breaths, stunned the first responders. How could a man endure such excruciating pain with such composure? James was rushed to a hospital in Pittsburgh where paramedics marveled at his strength even as his condition deteriorated. His burns were extensive, and his lungs had suffered irreparable damage from inhaling the searing fumes. Despite the medical team's desperate efforts, James succumbed to his injuries the next morning. The official cause of death, thermal inhalation. The community of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, was devastated. James had been more than a neighbor. He was a symbol of perseverance, a man who, despite his blindness, had built a life of quiet dignity. His neighbors remembered him as one of the kindest and most intelligent men they had ever met. a figure of strength who never let his disability define him. For the Oakland Fire Department, this was the township's first fire-related death in decades. The tragedy weighed heavily on them. "He was so calm," Ream said, struggling to reconcile James's composure with the grim reality of his fate. The story of James Schaffer is a haunting reminder of life's fragility. It raises painful questions that linger in the minds of those who knew him. What if he had known the dangers of microwaving a dry towel? What if someone had been there to help? What if there had been tools better suited for someone like James? Devices to keep him safe in moments of vulnerability? Though these questions remain unanswered, James's death underscores the critical need for safety awareness and innovative solutions to support those with disabilities. It's a stark lesson about the dangers that can lurk in even the most mundane tasks. In the end, James Schaffer's life and death stand as a testament to human resilience and the unpredictability of fate. His story reminds us not just of the need for vigilance, but of the strength that can shine even in our darkest moments. On a humid summer morning, August 27, 2012, the Lower East Side of Manhattan buzzed with its usual energy, street vendors calling out, cars honking, and life moving at its relentless pace. But within the unassuming walls of 191 Orchard Street, a chilling scene was about to unfold. A 29-year-old woman named Carlisle Brigham, raised in privilege and charm, was discovered in a stairwell, her body lifeless and surrounded by blood. What had happened to her, and why? Carlisle Brigham was not the kind of person you'd expect to meet such an end. The daughter of James R. Brigham Jr., a former New York City budget director, she had grown up with every advantage: private schools, a degree from the University of Mary Washington, and a job at the prestigious American Museum of Natural History. Her life seemed golden, yet behind the scenes, shadows loomed. Just a year earlier, Carlisle had married Anthony Champollion, a hotel executive, in a wedding that was the talk of Newport, Rhode Island. But the fairy tale had quickly unraveled. Within months, their relationship fractured, and they separated. The toll was heavy on Carlisle, and she spiraled into bouts of heavy drinking, her once vibrant life beginning to blur at the edges. Her father, deeply concerned, had flown in from St. Louis. He planned to take her to rehab, a last-ditch effort to help his daughter reclaim her life. But fate intervened in the most brutal way. The night before her death, Carlisle attended a wedding in Washington, D.C., returning to New York in the early hours with friends. They spent the night drinking heavily at a bar called the Sixth Ward. Carlisle so intoxicated she had to be carried at times. She ended up at the apartment of a platonic friend. She'd lost her own keys. Her friend left for work the next morning, leaving her alone, her demons closing in. Around 11 a.m., 19-year-old Mizanur Rahman, a neighbor, stumbled upon a harrowing sight. Carlisle lay sprawled in the stairwell, her body eerily still, her face pressed against the cold marble steps. Blood pooled around her head, her neck bearing a massive wound, and her chin shattered. Beside her were her belongings, a large handbag and a wallet. Mizanur tried desperately to save her, performing CPR despite the horror before him, but it was too late. Emergency responders rushed her to Beth Israel Medical Center. Doctors worked frantically, but the injuries were too severe. Carlisle Brigham was pronounced dead. The scene haunted everyone who encountered it. Investigators grappled with the brutal reality of her injuries. Blunt trauma to her head and neck, fractures to her arms, likely from trying to break her fall. Was it a tragic accident or was something more sinister at play? Initially, the severity of her wounds raised suspicions of foul play. A violent attack? A desperate suicide? But as detectives pieced together the evidence, a narrative of devastating misfortune began to take shape. Carlisle had been wearing high heels and loose clothing. The steep, unforgiving marble stairs of the building became the silent accomplice in her demise. She had slipped, fallen, and struck her head in a fatal sequence of events. For her father, James, the news was a crushing blow. He had come to New York to save his daughter, only to lose her before he could even try. Former Mayor Ed Koch, a longtime friend of James, recalled the sorrow in his voice as he broke down over the phone. The medical examiner ruled Carlisle's death an accident, a verdict that did little to comfort those who loved her. Her estranged husband, Anthony, was in London on business when he heard the news. Despite their separation, the two had been working toward reconciliation. Those hopes were now shattered. Like the pieces of Carlisle's life, Carlisle Brigham was remembered as a beautiful, kind-hearted soul, someone who could light up a room with her presence. But her story remains a haunting reminder of how quickly life can change. A single moment, a single misstep, turning promise into tragedy. In the stairwell where her life ended, the echoes of that fateful fall still seem to linger, a silent testament to the fragility of even the brightest lives.